My former director said I didn't match the aesthetic for the gala I paid for. Then her golden boy drained our shared account. Now the troupe's bankrupt, evicted, and my lawyer owns the rights to their show. I found out I wasn't invited to the premiere gala of Daughters of Dust from an Instagram story. Just a blurry video of champagne glasses clinking under red velvet lighting, tagged with #opening night and #blessed to be creating. My name wasn't in the captions. Neither was my face. Which was strange considering I was the one who paid for the whole damn thing. My name is Zoya. I'm 39 years old. I live in a converted warehouse loft in Oakland, California. I used to juggle fire on sidewalks for tips. Now I design lighting for experimental theater. That's the short version. 2 days before the gala, I'd walked into our rehearsal space to finalize some cues. I was still wearing my cargo pants and a black tee streaked with silver gaff tape. Valentina was already there, lounging across a velvet bench like she owned the damn room. "Hey," I said, setting my toolkit down. "Just need 10 minutes to go over the scrim transitions." She cut me off. "Actually, we should talk." That tone. She only used it when I was about to be insulted gently. She folded her legs, smiled like a magazine editor, and said, "We've been thinking about premiere night and we're trying to be super intentional about the aesthetic." I blinked. "Okay. It's going to be a really curated experience. A certain energy. And we're worried it might feel a little fractured if everyone from the team is there." "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then leaned in, lowering her voice like it would soften the blow. "Zoya, you've done so much for this project." "Really? But the gala, well, it's kind of about cohesion. Brand unity." It hit me like cold soup. I waited. "So I'm not invited?" She smiled, apologetic. "We're just trying to make it seamless. You know, for the donors and the press." I stood there, hands in my pockets, mouth dry. "Valentina, I am the donor." She laughed softly like that was a cute misunderstanding. "You're more than that. You're the heart. You're behind the scenes." I didn't say anything. Just nodded slowly and walked out, toolkit still on the floor behind me. That night, I lay on my back in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over the conversation again and again. My brain kept getting stuck on that word, cohesion. As if my presence was static in their otherwise polished frequency. As if I didn't match the brand I'd funded. They had my money, my labor, my connections. But not my face. That part was too messy. Too real. It wasn't the first time. I'd been the fixer for years. The one who bailed us out when we overdrew the collective's account. The one who sourced gear on short notice and called in favors with theater managers. I'd always been the one who said yes. But that night, as I scrolled through story after story of them laughing in cocktail dresses I'd never seen before, it hit me. I wasn't one of them. I never had been. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally done pretending I was. The day after the gala, I stayed in bed until noon. My phone buzzed a few times, messages from tech crew about a missing adapter, a thank you text from one of the stage managers, but nothing from Valentina. Nothing from the cast. No "wish you were here." No photos, no memories shared. Just silence. Like I'd never been part of it at all. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island staring out the window. The loft was quiet. Too quiet. Usually, post-opening night would mean beer bottles on the counter, someone crashing on the pullout, and a pile of receipts I'd be sorting through before lunch. Not this time. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Collective Receipts. It was an ugly habit, saving every wire transfer, Venmo screenshot, invoice. I had it all. Every lighting rig I paid for. Every speaker rental. The van I'd rented when Jasper's broke down. I told myself I did it for taxes. But deep down, I think I knew one day I'd need the proof. The proof that I was the only one who kept us afloat. I remembered the first time I met Valentina. It was 8 years ago in a condemned community theater space with folding chairs and a single working light. She was magnetic even then, long red coat, fingers stained with charcoal from set sketches. She talked about building a collective that made real art. Work that tore at the fabric of reality. I'd nodded, enchanted. Back then I was still performing on the street. Fire poi routines, contact juggling, sometimes puppetry with cardboard and string. People clapped. But they didn't stay. Valentina did. She told me I had feral energy. That I was necessary. I thought that meant something. Over the years, I moved behind the scenes. I learned DMX programming. I built rigs out of scrap metal. When someone dropped out, I picked up the slack. When someone cried in the bathroom, I talked them back out. I was the glue. But glue doesn't get flowers. Glue doesn't get listed in the press kits. I remembered a night 2 years ago, middle of tech week for Glassmouth. Valentina was pacing in circles because the video projection wasn't syncing. I stayed up till 4 a.m. troubleshooting. Got it fixed just in time. She hugged the visual artist in front of the crew the next day and said, "Couldn't have done it without you." Never mentioned me. That was the pattern. My money? Taken. My time? Taken. My input? Maybe if it didn't clash with the vision. My presence? Only when it didn't threaten the aesthetic. Sitting there, scrolling through years of overlooked contributions, something started to settle in me. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity. I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the used one. 2 days after the gala, I called Valentina. Not a text. Not an email. I wanted to hear her voice when I asked her why. She answered on the third ring, sounding breathless like she'd just come off stage or finished pretending she was still a star. Oh hey, she said, casual, like nothing had happened. What's up? I think you know what's up. A pause. Then Zoya, if this is about the gala. It is. She sighed, like I was the one making things difficult. We already talked about this. No, you talked. I stayed quiet. Now it's my turn. She went silent. I took a breath. I want to know why. Why I was cut out. Why I wasn't good enough to sit in the room I helped build. I didn't say you weren't good enough, she replied quickly. That's not fair. No? Then what is fair? That I paid for the space, the lighting design, half the costumes, and still had to watch from Instagram like a stranger. You're blowing this out of proportion, she snapped. It's not personal. It's about the show's image. I let out a low laugh. So I don't look the part? Is that it? Another long silence. Then in the flattest tone I'd ever heard from her, she said, Zoya, you know how it is. Some faces elevate a brand. Some don't. And there it was. Not even sugar-coated. All those years of hauling crates in the rain, skipping rent to fund new gear, fixing the messes she and the others left behind, and I was still just background noise to her. Functional. Useful. Not beautiful. You know what? I said, my voice starting to shake, I'm done. Zoya. No. Not just done with the gala. Done with this. With you. With all of it. I could hear her adjusting something on her end, probably brushing imaginary lint off her coat like she always did when people got emotional. You're being hysterical, she said. Calm. Patronizing. I froze. That word. Hysterical. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it from her. She used it when I questioned the safety rigging for that suspended piece in Marrowmouth. When I called her out for stiffing the sound in turn. When I asked why the black queer performers kept disappearing after one season. Every time I asked for basic decency, I was too much. Now I was hysterical again. You don't get to call me that anymore, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat there, phone face down on the table, waiting for the regret to hit. But it didn't come. No tears. No doubt. Just a terrifying, peaceful emptiness. And in that emptiness, something whispered. It's over. I didn't check my phone the rest of that night. When I finally picked it up the next morning, it was already buzzing with messages. The group thread, the one we use for everything from set builds to birthday drinks, had blown up. Danny, why are you making a scene like this, Zoya? Chris, do you know how bad this makes the collective look right now? Ash, this is not the time for a personal meltdown. The show is still running. Personal meltdown. That's what they thought this was. Not a reckoning. Not a boundary. Just drama from the woman who always said yes until now. I kept scrolling. Lucia, look, I get that you're hurt, but you're really hurting us by walking away like this. Jasper, we can't finish the tour funding without your help. Just be real. Danny again, no offense, but you've always been kind of weird about needing credit. That's not what this is about. Then came the ones that hit lower. Chris, again, we're a collective. You don't walk away just because your ego's bruised. Valentina, this show was never about money. If you thought buying your way in made you belong, maybe this was never the right fit for you. That one made my jaw clench. Buying my way in? Like I hadn't scrubbed blood and paint off that stage. Like I hadn't duct taped our gear cases in the back of a borrowed van. Like I was some rich outsider throwing dollars around for fun. Then came the guilt bait. Lucia, you're really gonna let Dion cover the storage costs on his own? After everything. Ash, can you just help us one last time? Just to get through next week? One last time. They always said that. I set my phone down and walked into the kitchen. Made coffee with shaky hands. My loft for once was silent. No crash pads. No borrowed costumes on hangers. No late night soldering of busted tech. Just me. It was peaceful. Terrifying. Peaceful. Until someone buzzed the intercom. I didn't check. I already knew. I answered and Valentina's voice spilled through the speaker like smoke. Zoya. Let me up. I should have hung up. Should have ignored her. But a part of me, the old part, the fixer, pressed the button. She came up alone, wearing a long black coat and sunglasses like she'd walked out of her own press kit. The moment she stepped inside, she dropped the cool act. You made this a mess, she said. You think you're the only one who's ever felt excluded? You think I don't know what sacrifice looks like? I didn't answer. You blindsided us. I had to explain to the press why the show's producer is suddenly missing. I laughed. I was never called the producer until now. Funny. She paced. Furious. You don't get to burn it all down just because your feelings are hurt. I crossed my arms. No. I get to walk away because for years I was used. Not respected. Not seen. Just convenient. She stopped. Stared at me like I'd slapped her. You've been coasting on everyone else's charisma, I said. And you know it. Without people like me, your brilliance never sees a like cue. Never gets staged. Never gets funded. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I let that silence stretch. Then I said, we're done here. And this time I meant it. It was just after midnight when my phone lit up again. Dion. I almost didn't answer. My thumb hovered over decline, but something in me, call it morbid curiosity, gave in. Hey, he said, his voice strangely calm. Too calm. Like a stage whisper meant to sound casual. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to check in, he continued. See how you're doing. I waited. Dion, what do you want? He laughed softly like we were old friends sharing an inside joke. Nothing major. Just, people are still a little shaken. Lotta emotions running high. Would be a shame if things got uglier. I frowned. What are you talking about? I'm talking about bridges, he said, his tone dipping lower. Once you burn them, they're gone. But sometimes, you might still need to cross back over. I stood up from my chair, heart pounding now. Are you threatening me? No, he said quickly. Just offering some perspective. There was a pause. Then he added casually, the LLC paperwork never got fully separated. Your name's still on a couple accounts. I froze. He went on. That Chase business card? The PayPal pool? Technically, all still active. Shared access. I could hear the faint clink of a glass on his end. Wine, maybe? Or whiskey? You might want to be careful, Zoe, he said, using the nickname only the inner circle used. Things get messy when people feel betrayed. Accounts blur. Intentions get misunderstood. Know what I mean? I didn't answer. He sighed. Look, nobody wants trouble. But if you start making noise, legal, public, whatever, we all lose. My voice was ice. I'm not making noise. I'm making a clean break. He chuckled. There's no such thing. Not in this business. And just like that, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, chest tight. Dion, the golden boy of the troupe. Always smiling, always shirtless during rehearsals, always here for the art. Now reminding me that behind the costumes and candles, this was still a game of power. And I had walked away without closing the books. 2 days after that call, I stood at the register of a local cafe, fumbling with my wallet while the barista waited. I slid my card into the reader. Declined. I frowned and tried again. Declined. Sorry, the barista said, polite but already moving on in her head. Do you have another card? I handed her my backup. It went through. Barely. The receipt was longer than it should have been. I didn't even look at the total. Just took my coffee and left. I told myself it was probably a glitch. Banks messed up all the time, right? But later that afternoon, when I went to pay my rent online, the payment bounced. Then the pit in my stomach turned into full-blown panic. I logged into my main checking account. $0. Savings? $216. I sat there blinking like my screen was playing a prank. Then I clicked through the transaction history. Line after line of withdrawals, transfers, business expenses. PayPal pulls. A Venmo charge labeled prop budget. Stripe payouts rerouted. I didn't recognize half of it. The other half? I recognized too well. I opened the old LLC documents. The collective's name. The signatures. Mine and Dion's. From the year we got our first arts grant. We'd never dissolved it. Never rewrote it. Because back then we trusted each other. I clicked through the joint account link to the LLC. Or what was left of it. It had been emptied in chunks over the last week. One name kept popping up. Dion Morales. I called the bank. I explained what happened. Told them it was unauthorized. They said the opposite. I was listed as a co-founder. A co-signer. These were internal transfers. I hung up the phone and just sat there. The sun had gone down. My apartment felt colder than usual. I'd always told myself I was too smart to get swindled. Too methodical. I'd helped a dozen other artists set up protections. Contracts. Pay schedules. Written budgets. But I never protected myself. Because I never thought I needed to. Because I believed them. Dion with his soft voice and well-cut jawline. Valentina with her silks and metaphors. Chris, Lucia, Ash. They were all in that group chat. All joking about budgets, asking for just a few more bucks, always with hearts and sparkles and a little, you're the best, Zoya. And now? They'd clean me out like I was a mark in a con. Except it wasn't a con. Not really. It was trust. And they knew exactly how much of it I had. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn anyone. I just grabbed my keys, threw on the first hoodie I saw, and drove straight to the rehearsal loft. The same place where we built our first show out of plywood and stubbornness. The same place I paid rent on for 3 years straight. The second I walked in, heads turned. Lucia froze midline. Chris fumbled a lighting cue. Dion, of course, didn't flinch. He leaned against the back wall, arms folded, looking like he'd been waiting for me. Valentina stepped out from behind a curtain, dressed like she was headed to a magazine shoot. Zoya, she said, like my name was an inconvenience. I held up my phone. You drained my account. Dion raised an eyebrow. That's a strong accusation. I checked the records. You used the LLC. You rerouted funds without my consent. He shrugged. Your name was still on the documents. Technically, it was all legal. Valentina crossed her arms. If this is about money. Don't, I snapped. Don't pretend this was anything but theft. She looked to Dion. Fix this. He smirked. Why? She walked away. We thought she didn't want anything to do with the project. I walked away from being exploited. Not from my name. Not from my rights. I could feel the heat rising in my throat. The urge to scream, to throw something. But I forced myself still. I scanned the room. Everyone watched like it was theater. Waiting to see if I'd break. If I'd sob. If I'd beg. But I didn't. I just stepped forward, calm as glass. You all think this is about feelings, I said. But you made it legal. And that means I get to do the same. Dion's jaw tightened. You think I don't know how this works? I continued. You used my money, my name, and now you think you can hide behind paperwork? Valentina opened her mouth again. Zoya. No. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She called after me. To a lawyer, I said, without turning around. And I meant it. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want apologies. I wanted consequences. And this time, they weren't coming from inside a group chat. They were coming from court. Lawsuits are slow. They don't care about urgency or closure. They unfold in fits and drags: discovery, filings, depositions, deadlines that move like molasses. But I didn't mind the pace. I had waited long enough already. My lawyer, Paige, was sharp as hell. She wore flat shoes, never smiled at anything she didn't mean, and didn't blink when I showed her the paperwork. This, she said, thumbing through the joint account details, is going to be a bloodbath. But you'll win. I nodded. That's all I need. The collective, or whatever they were calling themselves now, responded with a flurry of desperation. They hired a lawyer who clearly thought performance art counted as legal defense. Their first filing used the word community 17 times. It didn't help. While the case dragged on, they got loud. They released a joint statement on social media claiming I had chosen capitalist litigation over collaboration. That I was undermining years of creative labor to satisfy a personal grudge. Valentina posted a long note in grayscale. Some people choose destruction when they feel abandoned. We still choose art. It got thousands of likes. I didn't care. Because Paige subpoenaed the records. All of them. She showed how the LLC funds were funneled directly to Dion's personal account. How prop expenses were being used to pay for weed and spa days. How Valentina's costume reimbursement matched a luxury boutique receipt to the cent. None of it looked like community. It looked like theft. We settled out of court just before the trial began. But it wasn't a quiet one. They had to liquidate assets to pay the settlement, including the lighting gear, the camera equipment, the rights to Daughters of Dust, and most poetic of all, the lease on the rehearsal loft. When I walked past the building a week later, the doors were padlocked. A handwritten sign hung on the wall, closed for restructuring. Right. People reached out. Old crew members. Interns. A few cast members who'd left years ago. You were right, one of them texted. It was always a cult. We just didn't see it. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. I didn't post anything. I didn't make a statement. I didn't even tell my friends the full story. I just went home, took a long shower, and made dinner in silence. Because it was over. And for once, no one needed anything from me. A year passed. I moved into a smaller space. No industrial loft, no black box rigging overhead. Just a quiet one-bedroom in Alameda with a little balcony and an old cat named Rizzo I adopted on impulse. My days weren't packed anymore. No rehearsals, no emergency fundraisers, no hauling gear up 2 flights of stairs. I worked freelance lighting gigs when I felt like it. Picked my clients. Picked my boundaries. For the first time in my adult life, my phone stayed quiet on weekends. And when it rang, it was never someone asking me to bail them out. One afternoon, while I was potting basil on the balcony, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in a long time. Valentina. The preview read, "Let's talk." No pressure. I stared at it. My fingers hovered. I didn't open it. A minute later, another message followed. "We miss you. We've changed. We want to rebuild." My chest tightened, but not in the way it used to. Not panic. Not fear. Just a heavy kind of remembering. I sat down slowly, the terracotta pot still in my hands. The soil smelled warm and alive. The messages just sat there on my screen. 2 sentences. Like that was all it took. Like everything could be erased with an ellipsis and a well-placed apology. I didn't delete them. I didn't respond either. I just kept looking. I thought about those early days, building sets out of trash, laughing over instant ramen on cracked sofas, swearing we'd never be like those theater people. The nights where we felt like family. But families don't steal from you. Families don't call you hysterical. Families don't hide behind aesthetics when they cut you out. I watched the screen until it dimmed. Then I went inside, rinsed the dirt off my hands, and made tea. The messages were still there. Maybe they always would be. But I didn't answer. Because some bridges don't need to be burned. They just need to be left behind.